chat and discussion from an anti-nationalist perspective. I'm here tonight with co-hosts Mary Devlin and David Griffiths. How are you guys today?
Well, I'm doing great.
I'm good also, on this wonderful sunny Ardrossan day.
Right, okay. Well, that's good. It's always nice if it's sunny in Ardrossan. Yes, that's it. Okay, Mary, what are we going to be talking about tonight?
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about the eye-watering cost of some of Sturgeon's jollies.
So, okay. And David, what have you got for us?
Tonight I will be talking about another of the many SNP big lies.
Right, and we'll all be talking with Anne-Marie Ward of Favour, the drugs recovery charity, and we've got a little bit of a special focus on SNP's latest plans for drug decriminalisation.
And of course, we will have Zoomer of the Week.
So we will be back with all that and much more in just a moment. See you soon. Right, welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's number one politics and chat. And I'm here tonight with Mary Devlin and David Griffiths. David, it's been a couple of weeks since you've been here. What have you been up to?
Well, I've been down south again. Very sadly, I had to attend 2 funerals in 2 days, which is
sorry to hear that.
That was really tough. Anyway, that was 2 former work colleagues, so real sad, but beautiful services, wonderful. But I've also been rediscovering my habit as a compulsive walker, which is for my passion when I'm not playing golf. So I'm slowly getting back into golf, hopefully, if the weather keeps up. But for once, more interestingly for the show, I haven't been actively seeking any more information from SNP sources. I actually have a pro-UK friend who's a Hollywood insider, really quite senior, if you like, and he contacted me last week to say, look, just as a wee hint, when your opponent is making mistakes, you don't need to interrupt them, so maybe just leave them to it for a bit. And I thought that's really good advice, because as we know, right now the SNP is doing nothing but make mistakes, which is terrific to watch. So I'm just going to sit back a little bit, but come this weekend, I will be reinforcing my normal message to disaffected nationalists to get in touch if they're worried, because I know they will be, bearing in mind everything that's happening, as I know we're going to discuss shortly. So hopefully more snippets will reach me from the weekend, so keep watching, everyone.
Okay, very good. Well, you are the master of prediction, indeed. And so what we have to see, predictions have to come true to keep your reputation up. Of course, that quote, don't interrupt the enemy when they're making a mistake, I think comes from Napoleon. And perhaps some
I thought it was Sun Tzu.
Well, no, it said it was all over Napoleon. I saw the Napoleon movie's coming out. If you've watched the trailer this week, it's quite exciting. Anyway, if you're watching the show on YouTube, you can get a shout out with a super thanks or super donation. If you're not on YouTube, please go to the Majority site where you can pledge a monthly or one-time donation. Unlike SNP grifters, every penny you donate goes directly into powering our fight against toxic nationalism, not Taylor Swift tickets, it says here. Okay. Mary.
And as usual, I'll be handling all your comments tonight, so please make them short and snappy. I'll try to get as many on screen as I can.
David, I think you're up.
I think we missed a little bit there.
Yeah, maybe we missed a wee bit.
Oh, sorry.
Right. And just do what you can.
Indeed, well, as usual, guys, huge thanks to UK Union Voice and to United Against Separation Facebook pages, from where I know many of you are watching right now.
Right, okay, we have lots to talk about on the show today, so we look forward to your comments, and we'll be back in just a second. Right, welcome back to the Majority Show. Our aim is a better Scotland without toxic nationalism that has brought Scotland to its knees. So in a short while, we're going to be talking with Anne-Marie Ward of drug recovery charity Favour. But first, some breaking news. I remember last week we were talking about Angus B McNeil, who was suspended from the SNP due to bullying accusations. If you remember, some argy-bargy about poor attendance, which resulted in a shouting match between him and Brendan O'Hara, the SNP's chief whip. McNeil shouted, I like this bit, "You're a small wee man," several times at O'Hara, and before tossing the letters at him and storming off. Anyway, so today, Angus B has gone off in a huff saying he's left the SNP and will sit as an independent until the party provides clarity on independence. Well, good God. That's going to take
a while.
That could be taking a while. Anyway, here's his diatribe. Here he says, I will only seek the SNP whip again if it is clear that the SNP are pursuing independence. At the moment, the SNP has become a brand name missing the key ingredient. The urgency for independence is absent. Okay, well, David, urgency for independence is absent.
Well, Angus B, or Angus Brendan, let's not forget, who's very proud of his Donegal descendancy, and who I've been told by someone who's met him is a real Irish nationalist. So that's probably why he fits so well into today's SNP. However, Angus Brendan went on to say that he will definitely stand for election again in his current Western Isles constituency next year, be that for the SNP or for another party. So he's effectively saying, Alba, come and get me. That's what he's doing. He's serving up quietly.
Definitely seems
I was arguing with this the other day because I'm saying, what's the point in him going down an electoral cul-de-sac in Alba? Well, the point is he's not going to be, he won't get the nomination for that seat for the SNP again if he carries on like this. And I can't see any sign of him stopping carrying on like this. So it's the traditional sore loser, scorched earth thing. If he is deselected and he can't stand for the SNP, he's going to make damn sure that his successor can't win the seat for them either, which is great news for the Labour constituency candidate, who is almost certainly very, very well placed to win the seat now, because he's going to face at least 2 and possibly 3 pro-independence candidates. Thus, for once, splitting the pro-independence vote. So thanks for that, big sexy Angus Brendan. But I've been predicting for weeks that he will join Albert, and I think it's now inevitable. But let's see.
Yes, I don't think that you're reaching too far there with that prediction, to be honest. Seems quite likely. I mean, he's been following...
Mark Zegfeld thinks the same thing.
The Wings Over Scotland playbook, which is to try and force the Scottish government into dissolving, and then having a de facto referendum on the Scottish Parliament, which nobody really knows how that would work, because they've got a majority of seats right now with the Greens. And they lost a Supreme Court case, as we talk about, all the time. So the Scottish Parliament doesn't have the competency to declare independence. So basically, it's UDI under another name. And of course, Alba is the party of UDI. So, Mary, you look pensive there. Are you going to say something?
No, sorry. I was
right, okay.
Just reading the comments.
Right. Oh, yes. So it seems likely go to Alba or not. I mean, he could have done the Murray Black route, which is to, resign, as it were, or say not to stepping down, and then go for the cushy Holyrood list seat. And perhaps that may still be in the cards, David?
Every chance, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of SNP constituency MSPs will lose their seats, so I don't think it's made quite as easy for the to get by the list, because remember, it's the guys who are up top of the list, if you like, the regional list of MSPs for a party who traditionally get in first. For example, had Nicola Sturgeon lost out to Anna Sarwar in Glasgow Southside, she would have got in as being number 1 on the list. So, and that's the way it happens. So that's going to be more tricky if you've got a lot of their constituency MSPs not getting in anymore, which is very, very likely in the next election. But all that will mean, of course, is the number 1 guys will get in via the list, and the guys who are coming in and joining the party subsequently, it's not going to be quite as easy for those guys now. So it's not the cushy number that everyone seems to think it might be. And in any event, you've got to remember, these people have got enormous egos. You think Angus MacNeil really wants to come from Westminster to a little backwater in Holyrood? I don't think he does. Actually,
I don't know. Bigger, big fish, small pond type thing, and the money, of course, is pretty good for that.
I think actually Mary Black sees it, but Angus, I don't know. I mean, he's such an odd chap anyway, so who knows what he'll do? But I think Albert is a more likely destination for him right now. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the next election, although it's almost 3 years away, it's going to be a very different landscape for the SNP by the time it comes round, as we'll see in approximately a year's time.
Yes, that's definitely very true. Right, okay. I mean, there are other other news stories, but one of the big things that happened this week, or maybe just before the weekend, was it? The SNP announced that they were going to decriminalise. They had a policy of decriminalising drugs. Now, the issue of decriminalisation, I think, is quite contentious, and many people have different views on it. And perhaps many of us had youthful experiences with drugs or bad experiences and so on. And it's a very, very complex issue from personal experience and society and so on. Please let us know about what you think about that in the comments. But I think the issue here in Scotland is rather more straightforward here with this particular policy proposal. One is that drugs is a reserved issue. And irrespective of decriminalisation, Scotland has the worst drug deaths in Western Europe. Some 1,339 people died in 2020 and over 20,000 over the past decade, as you may remember from our discussion with Colin McGowan of the other drugs charity a few weeks ago. And also there's an inconsistency in approach with minimum unit pricing. Unit alcohol pricing. So to go through that, in a few minutes, we're going to talk to a young lady who recently graduated from Scottish High School about the availability of drugs in our schools. But first of all, I wanted to bring on Anne-Marie Ward of the drug recovery charity Favour, which stands for Faces and Voices of Recovery. And Anne-Marie's been on the show before, but for new people who are watching, could you just give us a little idea of your journey to recovery and a little bit about your charity's work?
Sure. First of all, thanks very much, everybody, for having me on the show. I'm very grateful to get this opportunity to speak to your listeners, and I'm also grateful that you guys are willing to listen, because I know we sit on the opposite side of the political divide. So, thanks for that. My name's Anne-Marie Ward. I'm the CEO of Faces and Voices of Recovery UK. So we're an advocacy-based charity that are based in Glasgow, but we've got about 5,500 members across the UK. We primarily focus on three things: advocating for people to get access and choice of services, which they currently don't, and they really don't in Scotland. And the other thing is making recovery visible. So I'm a person in long-term recovery. I have been abstinent from all mind and mood-altering substances for almost 26 years now, which is, to my mind, revolutionary. And
well done.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I didn't expect a round of applause. I was certainly harming myself in a very, self-destructive way. So thanks for your congratulations. But they're not necessary. I'm fully present for my life today, and I have a fantastic life today, and that's why recovery is so attractive. But unfortunately in Scotland, through our services being so different from England, people are not getting the chance to access recovery. That's why we've got 5 times more deaths in Scotland, so 3.5 times more deaths, and even in the areas where we've got the same social and economic deprivation to England, like the big cities and the schemes in Manchester, Newcastle, Liverpool, comparing them to Glasgow, where there's the same levels of poverty, we've still got 3.5 times more deaths. So that tells me that there's something wrong with our treatment system, not our laws.
Right. So, I think one thing, yes, you said you're on different parts of the political spectrum, but I think it's in everyone's interest, irrespective of which party they're in, to try and get some solution to this problem here. And maybe it needs some kind of cross-party work on that, but we'll put that to the side for the moment. So let's talk about this policy that they've proposed. What are your basic thoughts on that?
I mean, it's silly season at the moment, isn't it? So in the press, there's, the politicians are on holiday. So I think there's two things going on here. I think it's diversionary, away from the mess of Scotland's treatment system. They want to point the finger and indulge in whataboutery. And I think it's also divisionary. So they know that, some public opinion would like to see some drugs decriminalised. And, there's been a sort of normalisation of that conversation happening about drugs being decriminalised over the last 20 years. So I think that's the two main things that are happening here. They are being both diversionary and divisionary. And I think it's a deliberate political tactic. I don't think they are serious about the policy at all, because they haven't outlined a serious policy. The paper has basically been written by Transform, who are a lobbying organisation for decriminalisation. And I've spoke to the civil servants behind the scenes over the years. I haven't had any dealings with them over the last year or so, but I certainly know some of the key senior civil servants know that decriminalisation is never going to happen. In fact, it's a wee bit like asking the Chinese to stop burning coal or Russia to stop burning stop
Well,
bombing.
indeed. I mean, that's the thing that we often talk in this show, of course, about the SNP's willingness to virtue signal about any kind of issue, but not actually take any action. For example, we've talked to other drug charity campaigners who are appalled that their efforts have actually been stymied by the Scottish Government, notably Colin McGowan, who was on the show, who'd been battling with the Scottish Government to put a recovery centre in Hamilton, but they don't seem to want to know. And has that been your experience?
Yeah, there's absolutely an abject moral and social failure here from our government. They have gave up on the concept of recovery, and they've been completely focused on what they would call harm reduction policies, but our treatment system is not fit for purpose. We have got the highest cocaine use in the world. We've got a horrendous street benzo problem. And if you approach services for either of those two drugs, you are not getting a service that can help you with those drugs. Our drug services are still stuck in the 1980s and 1990s, primarily treating opiate use. And, as you know, more often than not, in fact, in Scotland, the majority of our budget goes on substitute medications rather than, and this is interesting because when the professionals in the field talk about treatment, they're talking about substitute medication for the most part. That's where the majority of the treatment budget goes in Scotland. And
it's like a maintenance rather than a recovery.
Yeah, well, yeah, so when the general public hears the word drug treatment, they think about rehabilitation. They think about helping get people off drugs. So there's a real manipulation of the language going on here as well. So, yeah, I think Scotland overall, its leadership in the addiction field has gave up. In fact, it doesn't actually believe that people can get well, and they've explicitly said that. The Drug Death Task Force, who were pulled together in 2018 after Nicola Sturgeon said we've dropped the ball comment. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
They pulled together a drug death task force, which was made up of basically pharmacists, medical people, and we fought for people with lived experience to get seats at that table. But of course, they cherry-picked people with lived experience to sit at that table. It was tokenistic. And after years of that committee meeting, they produced a report. It was over 200 pages. It had over 700 shoulds in it. The word should was
right,
700 times. And actually it said explicitly that we should not be helping people recover. We should only be giving them substitute medication. If you don't believe me, go and read the Drug Death Task Force. They fundamentally do not believe in recovery. They are prejudiced against it. They stigmatise drug users as moral degenerates, and it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. There's thousands and thousands of people in Scotland in recovery.
Why do you think they take that position, Anne-Marie?
I think because they're socially distanced from it. It's a wee bit like if all the social contagion research tells us if you hang about with fat people, you're going to get fat, right? You hang about with smokers and drinkers, you're going to smoke and drink. You hang about with fitness freaks, you're going to get fit. And these people hang about in a silo or an echo chamber, and they only believe, in fact, that they're like religious zealots, they're cult-like, and the things that, they're not open-minded. They don't believe that people can get well. They believe that this is purely an issue about, moral people making bad choices. When actually there is elements of that, but there's a lot more to it than that, including poverty, trauma, unemployment. We're talking about generations here of unemployment, inequality, all the stuff that I believe that Scotland has the opportunity to fix if we were governed well. And at this point, I don't actually care who governs us as long as they're competent.
Well, so is it the people that need to change then?
I think the leadership has to change. I think you need, the fish rots from the top, doesn't it? So in any culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you have a culture where you don't believe in addiction treatment that people can recover, you're not, people won't recover. If you compare it to the English treatment system, right, the two major differences here are in England, most of services are delivered through the third sector. In Scotland, they're delivered through the public sector, which is incredibly bureaucratic, very expensive. In Scotland, it's made up of well-meaning, lovely, kind, compassionate social workers and nurses and drug workers. And in England, it comes through the third sector, and it's made up of over 50% of people in recovery. I'd estimate the workforce in Scotland is probably less than 3%, and I think I'm being generous there, of people in recovery. So my point is, the culture of services in Scotland don't believe actually that you can recover, whereas in England, you will walk into a service, you will get a prescription. If that's what you want, a substitute prescription, you'll get it that day. It can take months in Scotland to get a substitute prescription because of the bureaucratic nature. But also, there'll be an expectation, this is really important, there'll be an expectation when you walk into a service in England that you will be met by someone who has recovered. So you'll be shown how to recover. We don't have that expectation in Scottish services.
Well, I think that covers a few of the questions I was going to ask, which was, what other regions in the UK are doing better than here, and
that sounds like such a simple thing, doesn't it? To have someone there who can meet them and say, "Look, I've done it, I've recovered. You can do it too."
Yeah, and I'm not advocating for just people in recovery. We need professionals to help us as well. But if your workforce is made up of half of those people who have recovered, the culture, then there's an expectation of hope and wellness. But if your services are just made up of really kind, compassionate, well-meaning social workers and nurses who don't know how to help you recover, you're going to, there's a culture then of dependency, and the freedom from dependency is what people are coming to the services for. They want to get off the drugs. We've seen that in all the research, and unfortunately, they're not getting the opportunity to do that.
Just one final thing, we'll maybe talk about I think you were talking about the minimum, I can never say this, minimum alcohol pricing, and how its lack of effectiveness, or something of massaging the figures, or something you were saying on social media.
Basically what they did, it was a wee bit like what they did with COVID. So remember, I don't know if you remember Dr. Ferguson's calculator. So they did these modelling exercises where they projected data rather than real life data. So they made lots of different assumptions about the data. And anyway, from 40 studies, there was only one study that said positively that minimum unit pricing had been useful for the general population. Now, what's duplicitous about this is that the whole policy was based around supposedly helping people who were, in trouble with alcohol addiction, and actually what the research has proven is that those people are actually adversely affected by it. They stop buying food, they stop putting their heating on, so it's actually had the opposite effect. So they've based the data on marketing, spin, and modelling of data, not actual real data, but projections of data, which is absolutely tragic. And the final point I want to make about that is that Public Health Scotland, in their own communication strategy, are not allowed to criticise policy or criticise ministers. They're not allowed to say this.
Yes, I saw that. Yes, before.
It doesn't get any better.
Yes, Mary's actually got a last question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about the Right to Recovery Bill.
Thank you so much, Mary. And I would really appreciate if your listeners could go and look at the Right to Recovery Bill. This bill would make sure that everybody had every choice and every chance to every pathway if we get it passed. So what that would mean is that if you wanted, for instance, if you wanted to switch from methadone to Buvidal, or if you wanted to switch from Buvidal to methadone, or if you wanted community rehab, or if you wanted a detox, or if you wanted residential rehab, you wanted to get off drugs, you would have the option to do that. So please look into that. We would make it law in the same way we've made it law in Scotland that you have to have a roof over your head. We would, we have to give people treatment to get well.
Right, very good.
Thank you.
That's really good. Thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show with us today. And we're going to show a wee bit. This is the Fairlie UK website here. and doing great work there. And I think this is the key point, perhaps, is that we need to have people like Anne-Marie there who have the actual experience on the ground to actually to advise and to help and support people who really need help. So great. Thank you very much for that, Anne-Marie, and good luck with your efforts.
See you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Right, very interesting talk there. Any thoughts just out off the bat on that, David?
Yeah, what it strikes me from comments and from what Anne-Marie said is there's more of a focus on delivering alternative treatments rather than recovery. And that is appalling when you consider that methadone consists of is responsible for almost half of the deaths in Scotland from drugs. And this is a prescribed drug, which is supposed to be helping addicts, and it's killing them. I mean, how on earth can that possibly be? It's just appalling. And this emphasis on treatment, if you like, or rather than recovery, it just seems wrong to me. And these ideas about let's decriminalise it, and let's provide safe consumption rooms. Guys, no, that's absolutely, to me, the opposite of what should happen. All it's going to do is encourage further use. It's not going to break the cycle of addiction for 1 minute.
Well, I think they're two separate. No. I mean, I think these are separate things, and that's why I think that's what's so maybe what's the word? I can't think of it right now. That's the problem with this. It's like this. The government puts forward, this is the solution to all our problems, and then you're like, well, actually, we've got a real problem here. This is this real problem. Can you not just fix this? Exactly. And we don't care about that thing now. We can talk about that other thing later. So let's just sort the problems.
Priorities?
Yeah, well, there is priorities. Is not. It seems the main priority is to try and get in front of a newspaper or TV camera instead of actually helping the people who need help. And I mean, we've all seen people who have. I know I have many friends, quite a lot of friends. My friends died from drugs, overdoses, suicides, and so on, related. Yeah, and you know, it's a terrible situation, and you can only do so much as a friend or a family, and so on. So we really need to have these recovery services working properly. 1,300 deaths to 20,000 over a decade. It's absolutely appalling. It's really shocking. Yeah. And it needs a cross-party, whatever it is, whatever it takes, should be up there saying whatever it takes to fix this problem, not this nonsense that comes around, David.
I agree. I mean, they're failing miserably, utterly. And of course, as always, the SNP is trying to say, well, of course, if Westminster would let us have our way with all
it's nonsense. I mean, it's nonsense.
Yeah, another... Like,
well, in fact, it should be the other way around. It should be a bit like, they should be saying, well, it works in England, so let's figure out what works in England.
Let's do what they're doing.
Let's do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Bear in mind,
that'll never happen.
The drug policy exists and applies all throughout the UK, but drug treatment policy is devolved. And it's in treatment that Scotland is failing, whereas England is clearly doing a lot better. So why aren't we talking England rather than saying, tell you what, we'll do it? No, you won't do it because you'll just make a mess of it. And you've got to take a holistic approach, is what Kate here suggested. That's quite right, looking at it as an entirety. But as I always say on here, it's always a usual whack-a-mole. I know, here's something going on over here. Let's fix that, and 8 other problems. Sorry. 8 other problems.
That was some mole
getting excited there.
That's what I feel about this, guys. It's true. I mean, every word Anne-Marie says resonates so well with me. I mean, so much. She's absolutely right. Her focus is right. The government's focus is all over the place. And somebody suggested here, maybe the use of methadone is because of the profits that the pharma companies and the government get from it. And how appalling is that, if that's true?
Well, perhaps that's the thing. Okay, to make it to gain a little bit more insight on what's going on in Scotland re drugs, we reached out to Joanna, who was until recently a high school student, Scottish school, and for obvious reasons, Joanna didn't want to be identified. So we got recorded this piece a little bit earlier, and it's about her experiences as a student at school and drugs that are there. So let's have a look at this. The theme of the show tonight is about drugs and Scotland's drug policy, but I wanted to hear from you. How easy do you think it is for young people to access drugs?
Very easy to get your hands on. You can contact anyone. It can be through social media, over the phone, and that's you.
And that's, just, you think that's pretty common at school? If you just went into a new school, for example, how long do you think it would take you to be able to find out the people who are selling drugs or getting drugs into the school?
Oh, very quickly. Very quickly.
Right. And what kind of drugs would you say are most common?
things like weed, cocaine, ketamine, everything along the kind of lines.
When we were young, the alcohol was a big thing for us. Do you think that's maybe different now?
I'd say alcohol's still a big thing, but people would like to also, whilst drinking, bring in a mix of drugs as well,
Right.
which is very common. Pubs, festivals, parties.
Right. Okay. So, so it's more like it's just everything all at once. Is that the kind of idea?
Yeah, 100%.
And is usually like a particular kid or a group of kids who are dealing with who are actually like the dealers, as it were, or is it adults that come into the school? Or what is? Do you know much about that?
Well, usually it would come from outside of the school and make its way in, or even if you're out of school, very easy to get a hold of.
Because people have the social circle already and, have friends who are doing it and they just ask them.
Yes.
Right. And what have you seen instances of kids at your school who have been under the influence of drugs in the classroom?
Yeah, it's pretty common actually.
And what kind of, are they disruptive or what kind of effect?
Usually it wouldn't be anything like cocaine or ketamine, but sometimes like weed is more of a common one in school.
Right.
So they're more just kind of sluggish and acting a wee bit tired, a wee bit off.
And do you think that it's a concern for pupils who don't do drugs to see kids like that? Or do you just think that's just, that's just the way it is?
Well, here I'd say people wouldn't take as much notice to it, whereas maybe elsewhere people would. It depends on the person, I think. It would maybe encourage them to do it, and that's terrible.
Yeah. Right. So, and do you think that young people are concerned that they would get into trouble for doing drugs at school or outside?
Maybe more in school than outside the school. I know of a few people that have gotten into big bother because of it, and it's ended in very serious consequences.
Right. Okay. And for example, that the consequences would be like getting kicked out of school or suspended or that type of thing, or get the police involved.
Yeah, police involved. We've got a campus cop, and they are very often involved in it.
Right. So even though you have this campus cop, there are still drugs have been taken at the school.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, have you ever had any of the kids you say, look, or you know of who have had a problem and said, had to get counselling or something like that? Have you heard of that situation?
Yeah, I have. We've got a counsellor in the school as well, and I can't say I've heard of many people who have turned around and went there for help or anything, because I don't know if that would mean that they're thinking they're scared that they're going to get into bother, like for seeking help.
Yeah, of course. That would be a thing that they would be would really be worried about.
Yeah.
Do you think, is there anything you think that could be done in schools? More education, more warnings, or what kind of things? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the warnings are pretty out there, especially in like PSE classes, guidance and stuff. The campus cops done talks. We've had police actually come to the school and do a walk round, and they'd like explain everything, like side effects, what would happen if you got stopped and you were under the influence driving.
Right.
We've had a lot of it.
Right, but it doesn't stop some people, does it?
No.
No, some people. And you think, why is that? Do you think, is it because some people just are like want to rebel against the system, or it's a social circle, or what? Any thoughts on that?
Anything. It could be a pretty wide range of stuff, like peer pressure, wanting to fit in, like.
Right.
It's a really like kind of like difficult subject, possibly for some people.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I mean, peer pressure is very strong. Certainly, at school, wanting to fit in is a big thing. Right. Well, okay. I think that's good. It's been a good insight for our viewers. Thank you very much for coming on the show tonight, and good luck with your next stages of your education.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Right, so there we had a little bit of insight into what's going on in schools. One of the things that struck me about that was that there is quite a lot of education, but perhaps it's not the right kind of education. Someone mentioned in the comments, perhaps addicts and so on should go around to schools. I don't know. I wonder if some kids... There's a lot of peer pressure, you know.
Colin McGowan has a programme for doing that.
Yes, he does.
They send people into schools and try to talk to the kids about all the consequences that can happen now and further down the line as well.
Yes.
For them if they get involved with drugs or too much alcohol or whatever.
Yes. Okay, so wrapping this section up, irrespective of the actual issue of decriminalisation, it seems this is just another distraction constitutional conflict. Yep. Distraction and constitutional conflict, of course, is the hallmark of nationalist governments, and that's what nationalism is all about. It couldn't be any more clear. Distract people from the actual problems you've got, and also create a constitutional crisis at the same time. Can some serious people get involved in this issue, please?
Yeah.
Right, we'll be back in a moment, and David will be talking the big nationalist lie. We haven't had one of those in a while, so let's hear that again. Once again, thank you to Anne-Marie for coming along.
And to Joanna.
And to Joanne too. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to do this one.
Wow.
Yes, that is impressive, isn't it?
No expense spared here.
Universe shattering. That's what it is. All right, David, give it a go then.
Right, here we go. Okay, so today's big nationalist lie is the claim that Scotland is a subjugated colony and that Scotland is trapped in what is meant to be a voluntary union. And why won't you let us leave? So this is something we see explicitly posted in social media every day by enraged nationalists, but we also see disgracefully references to it made by MPs and MSPs constantly.
Yes,
like 2 weeks ago at the SNP conference, Mary Black made her false claim that since 1939, 62 countries have left the UK and soon Scotland will be the 63rd. Now, we know this is a deliberate lie. All of those countries ceased to be British dependencies. They didn't leave the UK. Scotland is not a UK dependency. Scotland is the UK. That's the
and they left Scotland at the same time.
Absolutely right. They couldn't wait to get away from Scotland. So that's the truth of it, yeah. But interestingly, Mary Black, as I found out in my research, also made the exact same claim, word for word, literally, in the SNP conference in 2020. What's the matter? Short of material, Mary? Or is it the Westminster toxicity is maybe damaging your memory? Let's just look at the facts.
Oh, it's the same speech over and over again. I was reading something about that today. Actually, she just does the same speech over and over. Tories are bad. We're a colony.
It's true. It's like people say, but Adele, I see Adele's released her song again. Yeah, Mary Black's released her speech again. That's what it's like. But so let's remember, okay, guys, Scotland is not part of a union. Scotland was formerly an independent kingdom which voluntarily underwent a union with its land neighbour in order to form a new country. So since 1701, Scotland has been and still remains a region of what is now the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Now, Scotland retained, as I've said before on here, as we know, some trappings of nationhood. For example, it retained its own legal and education systems, plus a limited banking system, albeit using the shared currency of the larger country.
Yes,
but it ceased to be a country in its own right, although it did hold onto some trappings.
I don't know why they didn't get rid of some of those things at the time. It seems like this would be an ideal opportunity. Indeed, just one money, one country, one system.
It would have made a lot of sense, but remember, there were very different cultures. These two countries had been at war for a lot of the previous centuries, so I guess they wanted just to be a little bit
amicable,
eatery with it and stuff.
Yes.
But what I would say is, from what I've found, the new Great Britain Parliament legislated mainly on public affairs, but some private affairs were left to Scots law, as if to say, well, you can look after this if you want. But what it looks like is, going back, post-Enlightenment, which is the time when Scotland flourished as never before and led the field and led the world in many disciplines, Scots law and Scots education flourished, and Scots law was reintroduced as a university-led discipline, which is quite important. judges who were maybe not very learned. And so that's, I think, why, because for a long time, Scots laws, certainly Scots education, were the envy of the world. There's no doubt that's the truth. So I think they just, well, you're getting on with it, fine, you carry on, guys. I think that's more or less why it happened. And I think culturally also, they didn't want to say, look, you're no longer a country. It's quite a tough message to send to people. But I think they prefer to have this message that, you're part of a bigger country, a bigger organisation now, and that's fine. So that's how it went. Anyway, what's happened since then, of course, is not that Scotland's a subjugated people. Complete nonsense. Okay, not true. Since devolution at the end of the 20th century, Scotland has had a large element of autonomy in its governance within clearly defined boundaries. That is, you've got the UK government, which looks after reserved issues, and the devolved administration looks after devolved issues. Now, last year, of course, as we know, the SNP decided to spoil the party by saying, right, okay, we want to have a referendum. They won't let us for all the reasons I've already said, these false claims. So they went to the Supreme Court. And to no one's surprise, the Supreme Court ruled, no, Scotland cannot unilaterally declare itself independent of the UK, even if you have held an unofficial referendum. You cannot do this. And the Supreme Court actually went further, and in so doing ended any suggestion that Scotland has what is termed a colonial right to self-determination. Do you have a video here, Mark?
The court unanimously concludes that the proposed bill does relate to reserved matters. Accordingly, in the absence of any modification of the definition of reserved matters by an order in council under section 30 of the Scotland Act or otherwise, the Scottish Parliament does not have the power to legislate for a referendum on Scottish independence.
That's the one. Right. Yeah. That's not the one actually about the
colony.
The colony part. I'd like to see that part anyway.
That's cool, exactly. But in the determination, the Supreme Court drew a distinction between colonial self-determination, which does not apply to Scotland, and constitutional self-determination, which does. So in summary, what the Supreme Court found and ruled that was that Scotland is not a colony because it's never been invaded by England with an army, nothing like that, which means that Scotland never will have the right to unilaterally declare independence. And what happened there was the Scottish government's gamble backfired hugely, because not only did they not get the ruling they sought, but the Supreme Court ended any practical possibility of a repeat independence referendum without the express consent of the UK government, because the Supreme Court, and you can't go above the Supreme Court in the UK, said you can't do this. You don't have the right to do it. Very sorry. Colonial self-determination isn't a thing in Scotland. Now, this has been a little bit of technical legalese here, I know that, but it needs to be said, because that is why it is absolutely enshrined in UK law now that Scotland is not a colony, that Scotland never has been a colony. So Scotland will never...
Yeah, but I think one of the things is we have to look at this, okay, this is the thing, but what's driving this? It's a kind of it's a weird thing, isn't it? I don't know what to call it. It's a Scottish exceptionalism. It's like, that we're so special that we weren't part of this colonial empire, when of course we were part of it, and now claiming victimhood rights at the same time. We were the aggressors and then claiming victimhood. It's really just trying to have it both ways, I think, and it doesn't bear up in any scrutiny. But often, is what's said is a lie repeated often enough may become the truth, and people, young people perhaps, and more impressionable people, or nationalists may believe this to some extent as well, and feel we're hard done to by colony, we're oppressed and all this. You're like, well, I'm not oppressed. People of Scotland aren't oppressed because they had a free vote on whether they should leave or not.
That's it, exactly, and that's the constitutional self-determination part of it. Within the context of the UK, you can have a vote, but you can't have numerous votes in the same issue.
And shouldn't have really had one in the first place anyway, to be honest. But at least since we've had one in the first place, let's at least abide by the result.
Absolutely. Okay. So just for everyone listening, that's when you do hear this, you can challenge it and do so, because it's simply untrue, and it's only said because it's trying to whip up people into some sort of fervour, thinking, oh yeah, that must have happened. Those are the facts. That's what happened historically, and that's what happened recently. We're not a colony. We never will be.
No, it's nonsense. It's insulting to real colonies as well. Anyone who actually has been colonised and anyone who actually has been oppressed. Like, oh, I'm oppressed. I'm oppressed by what? What are you oppressed by?
Yeah, quite.
I mean, really, what? We've got more representatives than anywhere else on the planet, pretty much.
Yeah,
that's true.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that, David. Very good part there. It's a donation promo. We'd like to thank you for watching, and if you like what we do and would like to support the show, please leave a super thanks or a super sticker on YouTube. And if you don't use YouTube, please go to our webpage, themajority.scot, and pledge a monthly or one-time donation. Everything you donate, small or large, helps, and we are most grateful for everything, actually. Really great. We're going to go back in a few seconds. We are going to run a little bit long because Anne-Marie's interview was really good, so we kept on there with that a little bit. We'll be back in a few seconds, so Mary's going to be talking about Sturgeon's air miles. Okay, here we go. Right, Mary, you're up.
Okay, well, I am getting increasingly angry that Nicola Sturgeon, her SNP cronies and their hangers-on and the Greens have been enriching themselves while taking the British taxpayers for mugs.
Oh,
in Scotland, we're looking at council tax rises of up to 22%. We've got the highest income tax rates in the UK. We've got a cost of living crisis going on. Our services are being cut to the bone. While they're driving around in their private limos and hiring private boats, travelling the world in jets while they lecture us about the climate and subjecting us to LEZ zones in our cities, and spending taxpayer money like money was no object. So this week we learned of a couple more extravagancies with the public purse, and people are pretty angry, I think. Well, thanks to an FOI request, we learned that Nicola Sturgeon and her pals billed the taxpayer £148,000 for their attendance at the COP27 climate summit in Egypt last year.
Well, looking pretty happy there in that photo.
So they should be, so that Nicola could play at being a world leader.
Yes.
They all flew out to Egypt in November. Nicola and the Glasgow City Council boss Susan Aitken, Mary McCallan,
Why was
and
she there? That's a big question.
wait to hear this, over 20 aides and Scottish Government people went. So there was more than 25 of them, all flying out there at the taxpayers' expense. So this £148,000 bill included £45,000 for 25 rooms at the 5-star Paratel Beach Resort Hotel in Egypt. I mean, nobody even offered to share a room. Two of us can share a room. They all seemed, unless there was more than 25 of them, but 25 of them flew out and they all got their own room in the 5-star resort for 2 weeks.
Wow.
2 weeks.
Yes.
So they put in an expense claim, 24 pages of an expense claim, basically, which we've now found out because of freedom of information. The largest amount that was spent was over £75,000 for the officials to rent a office space and a pavilion for 2 weeks. That's £38,000 a week for a pavilion space and office space. What the hell was this office space like?
It's a bit of it's part of the scam, isn't it? Part of the scam is
the climate scam.
Well, we'll have this big conference every so often, and we'll make money from it, from gullible governments and people who want to pretend they're world leaders.
I mean, why do they have to be in a 5-star resort with multiple swimming pools, restaurants, God knows what, all having a room each and spending £75,000 just on the office space in the pavilion? Right. Now, many of them on the route, some of them went through London, so we had the London hotels as well, and a lot of them had an overnight in Milan. Isn't that nice? Lots of them staying in Milan for the night.
Couldn't you stay in a Travelodge?
You would think, just stay somewhere at the airport or just sleep overnight in the airport. I don't know the travel details of how you actually get to Egypt, but
you certainly don't need to go via Milan. I can assure you that there are many ways to get into Egypt without going via Italy.
Well, they also spent £1,000 on 17 mobile phones and SIM cards.
Now that is a weird one. I do think that is a bit strange.
What is that about? Why do you need mobile phones and SIM cards?
Because they don't have roaming.
Oh, they don't have the...
No, I mean, even if they didn't have roaming...
Well, roaming would be a lot cheaper. You can add roaming on. That's what we do.
For like £3 a month, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And we got the details of their food bill as well, which included a Burger King Whopper, some pizza, sushi, ice cream, Pringles, Pullman's, Everything is in great details.
What was a whopper of
I'll
a
tell
trip?
you, they weren't eating
That's what it
very
was.
healthily. I'll let you know that.
Oh,
It's
it's
But
nonsense.
while Nicola Sturgeon was there, let's not forget, she promised that she would pay £5 million. Remember?
Yeah, so that was the headline, wasn't it? That she would pay £5 million of taxpayer
Fair
money
money.
for some kind of.
It's for reparations.
Oh, was it really?
Reparations to third world countries who were affected by climate change. So that's on
Right.
top of all the money that the UK had put in.
But, I mean, is that money ever going to be forthcoming? I doubt it.
not a chance.
I don't know.
I mean, she went there because Rishi Sunak said he wasn't going to go because he had other priorities to deal with, like cost of living crisis, I think it was
Yeah,
at the
that's
time,
something.
and some other stuff. And eventually, Rishi had to go. He was browbeaten into going by climate extremists who basically said, "Oh, the planet is burning, but it doesn't matter that people can't pay their bills. The planet is burning." You're like, oh,
And
okay.
you jetting to Egypt is going to make it all better.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I mean, they just have to come up with these empty promises and stuff. And we'll spend trillions to reduce the world's temperature by 0.0001% over the next 100 years. Right. Well, okay. Instead, why don't we just, if the sea levels are going to rise, you've 100 years to walk a few feet up. I mean, really, that's
You're not going to, are you?
It's not that complicated, really, is it? Anyway, that aside.
Well, Scotland had to send 25 people. I mean, what the hell is Scotland going to do about the climate crisis?
We've got 0.
Nonsense, absolute nonsense.
The UK in total has 1% global emissions. And Scotland probably has
a tenth of that.
list, right? So it's 0.1%. Meanwhile, China has 29% or 30%, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, send Greta over there to complain at them.
Absolute
and
nonsense.
leave us alone. Anyway, I mean, we do our part. That's fair enough. But it's expensive. The problem is with these things, it's very expensive. And this trip just shows you this is the expense of it.
Well, she chose to focus on promoting herself rather than fixing problems that we have back here in Scotland, real problems everyone's facing with their heating and cost of living and everything else. But that's not all, folks.
Oh, my God.
And that's not all. Sturgeon was still splashing in the taxpayer cash, right up to the end. If you remember her farewell appearance on Loose Women.
Yes.
That cost the taxpayers $1,200 for her business class flight and over £500 for her hotel stay. So it must have been a very nice hotel that she was staying in at £500
I don't
a
know
night.
about that. £500 a night in London. It's not
Well,
you do not need to spend £500 a night.
You don't need to spend that. You really
£500.
don't. You really don't. And all she was doing was just going around all these chat shows and everything and just promoting herself.
Wasn't that before she was arrested?
It was before she was arrested. But she was supposed to, remember, she snubbed a request from Westminster's Scottish Affairs Committee.
Right.
Oh, yes.
They wanted her to give evidence about her time in office.
She said, no, I'm too busy. I'm meeting my friend Lorraine or whoever it is.
Yeah, down in London.
Yeah,
she just decided to embark on a round of media appearances.
Well, we always know it was the Sturgeon selfie tour.
Yeah.
That's what it really was. I mean, it started at COP26, went on to the COP27, and would have gone on to the COP28 if she hadn't been arrested, I guess.
Indeed.
And hadn't had to resign for who knows what at the moment.
So basically, they're all enriching themselves and having their foreign holidays and jollies and all of them together.
Well, isn't that the point?
And it's all on the taxpayer.
Isn't that the point, to enrich themselves? I think for some people it is. They're used to the idea that it's not their money and it belongs to them somehow and that they're the good stewards of it, but they're not at all. Anyway, thank you, Mary. I think that was very good. Say passionate. That was very passionate and passionate.
Oh, I hate wasting money. I really hate wasting money.
Well, that's very true. Anyway, think good uses for your money would be donating to the Majority Show or buying a fabulous t-shirt or mug or things that you can do that don't actually cost any money but make us extremely happy, are subscribing to the show on YouTube, telling your friends about us, and doing all of the above. That makes us very happy. Now, we're running a wee bit late, but not that as much as we thought. So
I think we're quite a bit over, Mark.
Are we really?
Yes,
okay.
We are.
All right. Anyway, we're glad to have you with us. But next up, it is the highlight of the week. It is the moment you have all been waiting for. It is Zoomer of the Week. Right, okay, I'm first up here. So my nomination of the week is Sarah Musson, who's often spotted...
Musson.
Musson.
It's Musson.
Musson.
Yes.
Musson, yeah.
Right, okay. Musson. It says Musson here. Right, anyway, who's often spotted hanging around Nicola Sturgeon like a fly near a giant turd. Sarah,
Yep,
Sarah was recently a nominee here, I think, by David. David, didn't you nominate her?
I did indeed. Yep,
Do you remember what that was for?
that was for hanging about like Banquo's ghost every time
Oh,
anything's happening.
Banquo's Ghost. That was a classic. That really was. That was very good. That was only a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, Sarah decided to wade into discussion about Scottish raspberries, which was started
the
last
important
week
issues.
by Jim Fairlie, the younger, not the older. I'll say so. Okay, so Jim. Here's Jim's tweet here. Start with Jim. He says he was extremely disappointed that Marks and Spencer did not have Scottish raspberries on the shore on its shelves in Perth. There it is, and one of them is from Portugal, and the other one was two of them. Kent. I don't know if he actually bought these.
I'm getting a crick in my neck here trying to read this.
Or he took a picture of them in the store. Anyway, it didn't last long because Marks and Spencer's, as you can see underneath here, says, "Hi Jim, we work with many Scottish farms sourcing raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries and cherries. Our Scottish raspberries will start being harvested this month and will be available in all 94 Scottish stores this summer. Thanks." And you can see this picture actually of them there. So
excellent.
Anyway, but that didn't deter Jim. Oh no, Jim. Oops, he went further investigating. He said it would appear there's plenty of Scottish raspberries around. Now,
he's calling them out, is he?
Yes. So
what's this got to do with Sarah?
Well, she's coming to her. Coming to her. Well, just, I mean, spare a thought for the social media interns that work in Marks and Spencer's or any large supermarket when they get the Scottish nationalists on the other end of the phone or the other end of their Twitter, like, oh, how dare you. Poor, but they've probably got a wee folder that says Scottish nationalist nutters and how to deal with them. Anyway, and I'll just point out...
You'll probably get special training, yeah.
I'll just point out on this picture here, this is my pet topic, is that these raspberries here, you can see, you can't actually see down the bottom, they're called Malling Bella. Malling, of course, being the town in Kent where these varieties are created, which means these are actually English raspberries. They're actually English raspberries produced in Scotland. Yeah, that's it, right. Anyway, Sarah comes along, as if it was bad. Sarah comes along, she says, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, fighting for Scottish produce to be in our supermarkets could not be more important. Well, you know what is more important, really? Is more important is actually the cost of living crisis is actually more important than that.
We can't all afford raspberries.
Well, I don't know, who cares really where they come from? These raspberries that were developed in England comes from Portugal, comes grown in Scotland. Who cares? It's just a ridiculous nonsense, grievance. And, I see Jim. Jim's going to stand outside the supermarket saying, "You can take our lives, but you can never take our raspberries." That were developed in England. Anyway, so Sarah and Jim, I'm going to do a double get my nomination for Zimmer of the week.
Okay.
There we go. That was that.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was good. I'd try my best. Okay, next up, I think it's going to be David.
Me.
One. Press the wrong one here. All right, David, you're up.
My candidate for the week this week is SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn. Yes, the man with the shapely skull has been under a lot of pressure lately because, as we know, the Westminster SNP group is not a happy band. We saw Margaret Fairlie reappearing unbelievably following her suspension and just prior to her voters kicking her out. So she sat down in the Commons this week and she sat beside her new friend and fellow independent MP, Angus Brendan, as we spoke about earlier. He's now an SNP MP. So against this backdrop, Flynn the Skin spoke to Sophie Ridge on Sky on Sunday, and he came out swinging. As you can see, I don't know if you have the video clip.
Yeah, I think I've got it. Yeah.
The next general election is going to be about change. And when it comes to that, I'm pretty optimistic about our hopes, and that's twofold, because when we look at the Labour Party, today you have reports that the Labour Party are simply going to follow through with Conservative spending plans. When it comes to green energy proposals, they've walked away from the £28 billion of investment. They have indeed.
They said that they'll scale up in a couple of years. If you're talking about £28 billion a year, that is fair enough. And also Rachel Reeves said today that she wouldn't necessarily meet the 2-year spending plans of the Conservatives either.
Well, I think it's quite clear that the Labour Party, when it comes to some of these big issues, have been changing their mind on an almost daily basis. But of course, beyond simply Tory spending plans and green energy proposals, the Labour Party are of course fully enthralled with Brexit. Now that's anathema to voters in Scotland, where 72% of people want to be back within the European Union. So if you juxtapose the Labour Party and their negative proposals for the future versus the SNP's are planned to be at the heart of the European project, to have access to the single market, to really deal with the cost of living crisis through that, to be able to have more people of working age in our economy and to give people a choice over their own future. I think it's only quite clear to voters in Scotland that there's one party who offers change and one party who offers real hope, and that's the SNP.
Can I just say, I mean, Scotland at the heart of the European project.
There you go.
Has anyone told Europe?
Jeez,
Vote SNP to reverse Brexit and keep Boris Johnson out of Downing Street. So how did that work out, given that
it's a disaster.
So I thought, okay, well, interesting. He said what change he wants, but how would you get that by voting SNP in a UK general election? So I asked him, and I also asked him on Twitter, this was, how fascinating it is to see the SNP Westminster leader advocating very strongly for a return of the Conservative government, because he made it clear that he wouldn't advise anybody to vote Labour, but he's talking about change. So what change is going to arise if you've got currently a handful of
They've lost the change thing. That basically it was, separation equals change, and they've lost that, because now it's a continuity. I mean, imagine styling yourself as a continuity candidate. That's
And this is what. So when the SNP say don't vote Labour, which is what they're desperately pleading with people, they're saying, okay, let's carry on the way we are with a Conservative government. So I said it's fascinating to see you advocating for this. And in fairness, he did reply immediately by blocking me, literally.
It was undeserved.
Another badge of honour for you.
I'm so proud. But for the pretense of making out that the SNP, voting SNP will lead to any change at all, and for openly backing a fifth consecutive Conservative government, sorry, Flynn the Skin, you are my nomination.
No, it's rubbish. It's rubbish. Just really not very good at all. And he's so smug as well in his delivery. It's, of course we're right. We know Scotland in the heart of Europe. I mean, really, Mary, you're up next.
Good. My Zoomer.
No, wait a minute.
Rushing ahead. I'm keen to get on with it. Come on.
Right. Okay, what have we got here? Right, go ahead. You're ready.
Was that it?
Yeah,
okay.
That was it. You're on. You just started a wee bit early.
My Zoomer of the week is one of Scotland's best-known nationalist victims, Iona Fyfe.
Oh, no.
For her lack of self-awareness, her selfishness, and for being such a show-off. Oh. On the 21st of June, Iona tweeted that she was very sad. She was begging for coffee donations to pay her bills, posted that she was stressed, up at 4 a.m, worrying about money and the lack of work. I mean, you might have a bit of sympathy for
struggling
that.
Artist.
We've all been there. But then, less than 3 weeks later, on the 10th of July, there she is showing off that she has just bought 3 tickets to go and see Taylor Swift at Murrayfield next year. And we all know that these tickets are not cheap. These tickets are expensive. They're at least £100 each. Yeah. You can get cheaper ones, but I'm thinking she hasn't bought the cheap tickets.
Well, it probably says. Oh, it doesn't say the seat on them. That's been blanked out, hasn't it?
So what upsets me most about this is that I know that there's been a lot of people have been really distraught. There's young girls, young guys, I guess older, men and women as well. But a lot of people have been really distraught that they couldn't get a ticket. People have been crying. They've been online and they've been on their phones for hours and they were left disappointed. And here we have Iona. She's got 3 tickets. So there were 14 million people across the UK had registered to get tickets. And it was estimated that 70% of them wouldn't be getting any.
Yes, we have to admire her dedication to getting.
She's got one for every day, yes. And she shows off about it as well.
That's not good.
Well, she showed up because she, I
soon.
mean, she seems to be utterly obsessed with Taylor Swift. I don't know if Taylor knows this, but she sings her songs all the time, and she talks about translating into Scots. That's what she talks about.
Well, I mean, I
for
think
God's sake.
I actually think that's a worthy endeavour. I don't think there's any, I think they've got people. Some people are artists and they can do their work, and you can like it or dislike it, whatever. It's not a thing that necessarily means that they are. You sing a folk song about Scotland. It doesn't mean that you're a nationalist. Right, I mean, I do that. I have to do my strumming and so on. But she is a nationalist, and she appears to be doing this thing, which it just appears to be a little bit greedy. It feels greedy,
Selfish. It's greedy,
and that's a different matter altogether from nationalism, and it's part of that victim culture. I noticed also that Janie Gordley.
Well, she's part of
the
team that does the pile-ons.
Yes,
on people.
They're always complaining about people on Twitter, especially unionist men. And if anyone criticises them, they go on claims of misogyny as well. But Mary is not a misogynist, I would think. Are you?
I don't think so, indeed. No, indeed. But just one point on that, the reason they keep stressing this about Scots being a language, and you know that there are certain journalists that do the same thing, it's because there is no differentiation between Scots and English people, so they try to make this differentiation, as Republicans and nationalists do in Ireland, to say we have our language, it must be enshrined and people must learn it. It's to strengthen a difference between Scotland.
Yes, of course.
Yes, we know. Yeah.
You do it. So I mean, we all know that Scots. I mean, you see UNESCO calls it a language. So what? It's just an accent. That's all it is. Let's be honest, guys. You can phrase it.
Well, there's some. I mean, it's fair enough. There are some. There are words there, but the problem with it is that nobody uses it.
Quite.
Right, we use a few words. We use maybe a couple hundred words, Scottish words, in amongst English. I mean, even in today's talk, how many have we used? Yeah. Hardly any at all, right?
Exactly.
And so so it's not the problem is them trying to push it on us and say this is a language, this is a thing, this is a thing. It's not a thing. Go ahead, sing your song in Scots and it may be beautiful, whatever, but nobody's going to understand it. It still may sound great. I don't actually know so much about her artistic work, but anyway, and all that's different from just saying claiming poverty one moment and the next as well.
Well, I mean, she was showing off as well. She was saying, "R.I.P. my Amex balance." I mean, hardly anyone in Scotland's got an Amex card. In America or other countries, they're very common, but hardly anyone uses an Amex. Card in Scotland. She's just trying to show off.
As
again.
I said, Godley, of course, came on to defend her, and it's just like you just think these people were just the professional victim clan, and they're just her and that. Iona Fyfe and Godley and that other one who does the poems, and they're just like three cheeks of the same arse, really. So anyway, David, you can decide.
Right. Okay. I very rarely do this, guys, but Iona Fyfe's too insignificant. I'm not going to give her ego the boost of.
Yes, that's true. Very good point.
Yeah.
Will be one very soon because she's had 2 nominations now, but it's going to go to you, Flynn the Skin.
Oh, you did your own.
You've got no right acting that way.
Perfectly.
Civil question. I shouldn't really be blowing my own trumpet, but it's the first time I've ever...
you're perfectly legitimate to do that. Yep.
Yes.
It's a good winner. Thank you.
I thought the Strawberries would win, to be honest.
The raspberries.
The raspberries would win it. Anyway, okay. Thanks, David, for that. I mean, fighting with raspberries, get a grip. You're an MP. Can you not just do something useful?
Yeah.
Anyway.
If only Scotland sold more raspberries, our troubles would be solved.
Right. Okay. So anyway, thank you all for being with us in a slightly extended show. I think it's been really quite good because Anne-Marie was really excellent. Yeah. Joanna, who did the kid from the school, was a bit of insight there. And of course, David, Nationalist Lie of the Week. Fantastic, Mary. You also great too. I'll leave you with the thought of the week. So this is just something I was thinking about actually. In recent weeks, I've been trying to answer the question, what makes the UK special? And this is quite a difficult one. I think you might want to try and think about that and contact us on Twitter.
We've got homework.
With that. Yeah, some homework. And what makes it worth fighting for? And I think I actually came to this kind of conclusion. I don't know if maybe it's just a step on the way, that the clue is in the name, the United Kingdom. It's because we're united that we're strong, and because our country is all different kinds of people from all places and all different parts, and we're not the same. Imagine how Scotland would be if everyone was the same. That's what they want, a single Scottish culture. Scottish culture isn't even the same from here to, the other side, an hour's drive away from here. And they want it to be all the same, all learning the same stuff, all homogenized, all one thing. And that's what they think is the strength. And the strength is that difference, I think.
Quite.
It's that unity of all these
Even
different
though
things.
we're different, yeah.
Yeah, that are they're trying to break. So let's not let them do that. Okay, anyway, that was a bit longer thought for the week than we normally have. We're so happy to have you with us on the show every week. A huge thank you to Anne-Marie, thank you to Mary and to David, and we will see you again next Wednesday for more fun and more Zoomers.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your comments.
Well done, everyone. Speak next week. See you. Have a good week.
Right, take care.